Hello, good afternoon, good evening. Well, 6 o'clock now. Introduce myself. My name's Brian Dickinson. I'm a history teacher down in West Sussex, and I'm also an examiner. Um, so I know my way around exam papers. This lesson is going to be on looking at paper 2, whereby it's a depth study like the cold superpower relations, but also the other study where on this particular one is going to be on early Elizabethan England, and the exam questions relating to that and the skills that you're going to need to do that. So I'm just going to share my screen with you so that I can, with a PowerPoint, and go through last year's exam questions with you. So these what came up last year. Bear with me for a moment, if I can find it. So, two features of. The first question is going to explain two features of. Whereas on the questions on the superpower relations, so two consequences. This is two features of. And last year, so you've got a short explanation of two different features. Okay, try not to make them the same one. Use historical evidence and make it precise. Two sentences for each one. So, and I'll give you an example of what they're like in a minute. The feature in sentence 1, oops, beg your pardon, and then obviously an extra sentence about the second feature in sentence 2. So it's only 4 marks, 2 minutes on this one. Really, it shouldn't take you that long. Okay. So what I'll ask you one was describe two features of the theatre in early Elizabethan England. Okay. Please do not make the mistake of thinking, oh, yes, let's talk about Shakespeare here. Shakespeare in a theatre, yes, but please don't go into what he wrote and things like that, because he was not around until the very end of the Elizabeth reign. So it's about the theatre, okay? So show that, not the consequences, show the features. Please don't give the same one twice. So, for example, going to the theatre became a popular pastime in Elizabethan England. It led to the building of many new theatres, in Shoreditch, and you can talk about the Globe in London as well. Theatres include a standing area, and if you go to the Globe in London, there is a standing area. You can stand, you don't have to, you can sit if you want, you have to pay more. Poor people tended to stand to watch the performance because it was more expensive to sit. If you go to the Globe Theatre, you can stand, and some of the actors come and stand around you, and sometimes act amongst you as well. But it's a long time standing. People were discouraged from leaning against walls, for example. If you go to the Globe today, you can sit down, and you have to pay for that extra, and you have to pay also to hire out a cushion because they're wooden seats. Only men were allowed to act in theatre, so obviously boys tended to play the roles of women. So any one of those you could talk about, and you'll get a point for each one. Okay. So the next one is explain why something. Okay. So 3 key causes here: precise historical evidence, or a clear explanation, and how things lead to something. Okay. So explain why Raleigh's first colony in Virginia failed. And it says you may use the following in your answer: the native Alaquanes and the damage to the ship, the Tiger. You must also use information of your own. Okay. And when it says may use, you should. You may use the following in your answer. You should really. Examiners will be expecting to see it, and they'll be surprised if you don't. And it says you must use, and you do. When it says you must use information of your own, you should. If you don't, you won't fail, but you won't get such a good grade. Okay, so you really do have to make sure that you include lots of different your own information. So it needs. If you only use the stuff there, the damage to the ship Tiger and a Native American, so you can't imagine, you can't remember the name of the tribe, then the Native Americans will be fine. If you only mention them, then probably the most you're going to get is 6 or 7 out of 12. You may get an 8 if you're lucky. Okay. So one thing, things that you've got to really look at here, the colonists got into conflict with the Native Americans, okay, from whom they were constantly demanding food supplies. And so therefore, the relationships who they were hoping to rely on, because of the natives knew the area, knew the land much better than they did, it didn't work. The Tiger, one of the ships, had been damaged on the way over. Which meant that a lot of the food and supplies and seeds that they were hoping to bring from were damaged or destroyed or lost. Okay, the colonists quickly ran out of food, say, because they had left England too late in the year to plant things. So when they went over to planting things, they couldn't do it, and they didn't have enough food to last them. So lots of them, unfortunately, they ran out of people starved. The colonists came from diverse backgrounds and didn't work well together. The upper class were not willing to work, and the middle class were not willing to take orders. So, whereas you would have thought they'd all want to muck in and really help build a new colony in the new world, a lot of the richer ones didn't. They still brought over from England their ways of working and their class distinctions and class differences, and that continued really in the new world, and they weren't prepared to get stuck in that, creating resentment. The people taking orders were resentful of that, and so the relationships really soured between each other. So they were fighting amongst each other. They were not experienced of what you would have thought, would you not, that if all these people are going to go over to a new world and start a brand new place to live, you think that they would take over people who could do that, and they didn't really. They weren't experienced at building settlements, a lot of them. They are not willing to put the work in to establish a settlement properly. They really took over the wrong people, and they didn't have the correct skill sets to do this, and so therefore they were rubbish. And the Raleigh had sent lots of artisans to help set up a colony, but not enough farmers. So, it's all very well taking over people who can make good tables and windows and curtains and things like that. Very nice. But, you're starting up a new colony in a new land. You need to feed yourself. You need people who can dig and land and grow crops and know what to do. And they just took over the wrong people. So therefore, lots of them literally died, starved to death. It didn't work. So they were very ill prepared for that. So what you need to do for that really is to use all that information to go through what it is I need to do. Okay, so if you go back to the question, why did it fail? Those are the reasons. So talk about the damage of the ship, talk about the Native Americans, and then you can use other things like they didn't take over the right people. Okay, so therefore what you've got to do is say, and please relate it to the question. So it failed because of this. It didn't work because of this. Okay, these are the reasons, and make sure that when you've got those bullet points there to help you, you use them. Okay, make sure you use the Native Americans, make sure you use the ship, and then your other, why else did it fail? It wasn't just those two things. There were other reasons by taking over the wrong people. So those are the things that you've also got to talk about. Okay. So the next one, explain how far you agree with something. So you really have now got to look at, a lot of students really get stuck on this, because they are not too sure whether they agree with something really. Have they got enough information to agree or disagree? And one of the things that you've got to try and do is don't worry too much about whether you agree with something or disagree, but just have a go. Okay. I think as students, what you get caught up in is thinking that the teachers know everything or professors know everything, and how can I disagree with that? Don't worry. Okay, disagree or agree. It's looking at an alternative view. So make sure you write an introduction. Okay, a full paragraph explaining each factor of something, and a conclusion which summarises the whole answer in 4 sentences. Please make sure you write a conclusion. So many students do not write conclusions. It's really frustrating as an examiner to see it. Okay, so for example, this is the attitude of the papacy. Hopefully you understand what the papacy is, where the Pope you know, the head of the Catholic Church, was the main reason why Catholic opposition to Elizabeth increased in the years 1559 to 88. How far do you agree with this? So this is asking, was the attitude of the papacy, was the attitude of the Pope the main reason there was opposition to Elizabeth? Or was there other things? So you could, you know, how far do you agree? So you've got to talk about here the excommunication or threat of excommunication and Mary Queen of Scots and your own information. Okay, so you know how far do you agree or disagree? So you've got to show both sides of an argument here. You've got to show that there is an argument that the papacy were responsible, and also they're not. And then you've got to say which are you more drawn to? Was it the papacy causing it, or was it something else? Make sure your whole answer is focused on the point that you're making. Okay, so please make sure it's all to do with this question. May, when it says you should really, and when it says must, you do that. Okay, so what can you include in this? So relevant points which support this. The Pope's excommunication of Elizabeth encouraged Catholics to flout the religious settlement. Don't forget Elizabeth, when she came to power, she had a settlement, a religious settlement, which kind of helped and allowed Catholics to carry on what they were doing, but the Pope still excommunicated her, and this emboldened the Catholics to ignore the rules that she put into place. It increased the risk of foreign invasion then, because the Pope was against Elizabeth, because they didn't see her as a rightful heir to the British or English throne. This encouraged other countries, especially Spain, to want to invade. Okay, because they knew that they would have the backing of the Pope. There was open opposition to religious settlement after the papal decree was published in England, banning Catholics, English Catholics, from attending Church of England services. So when the Catholics were banned from going to attend Church of England services, when they were banned from doing that, there was open opposition. So you could argue then, because the Pope really excommunicated Elizabeth and made sure she was not part of the Catholic Church, even though she was more up as a Catholic, so therefore Catholics did not see her as the rightful heir. This really, if you've got a leader of your church, of your religion, that doesn't support your king or queen, then why should you follow what they're doing? So therefore, it is okay to disobey them. This is the whole problem that Henry VIII sort of kind of had, really, wasn't it? He thought, well, I can't get the Pope to agree with me, so what I'll do, I'll just change my religion. And of course, then you've got the problem of what you do with Catholics, and this is the problem that Elizabeth had as well. So, but now there are arguments against that. So you could also argue that the presence of Mary Queen of Scots, when she was in England, don't forget she fled from Scotland, and when she was in England, she provided Catholics with an alternative of focus. So when it wasn't just the Pope saying that, oh, she's excommunicated, it was also the fact that Catholics had this focus of Mary Queen of Scots to try and put her on the throne. So a lot more of them saw her as a natural heir to the Queen, to the head of England, of the throne of England. Don't forget, a lot of the Northern Earls were Catholic, and so a lot of them were openly opposed to Elizabeth as well, and were quite emboldened to revolt and try to overthrow. And don't forget, there were plots as well. Don't forget, there were other things to do. There were plots put in place to try and overthrow Elizabeth, some of which were, last one was going to be to execute her, but there were others about trying to get her to marry a Catholic or replace her as well. Catholicism in England was strengthened after the English seminary in Douai in the Netherlands, okay, and they began training priests and sending them to England. So Catholics and the Dutch started training priests and sending them to England to try and counter what was going on. So seminary priests provided a connection to the counter-Reformation movement in Europe. So this counter Reformation against the Church of England and Anglicanism encouraged people to counter that as well. Catholics were treated more harshly as the threat of invasion by Catholic powers grew, which further encouraged opposition to Elizabeth. So because Catholics, like especially the Northern Earls, opposed Elizabeth, lots more of them were locked up or treated very harshly because Elizabeth wants to stamp of authority, don't forget, which made lots more Catholics fearful and opposed to her. Okay, so therefore the which made a lot more Catholics wanting to get rid of her. And don't forget that you had the focus of Mary Queen of Scots as well, which encouraged people to plot and thinking, well, while she was in England, we can then have her overthrow. If we overthrew Elizabeth, we can install her as the Queen. While she was in Scotland, there was not a real problem. The fact that Mary Queen of Scots came to England as a fleeing from Scotland because they wanted to overthrow her, and of course she was a cousin and she was related. So therefore, what you've kind of got here is one part of this saying that the Pope is the problem, and the Pope is encouraging other countries like Spain to overthrow and want to make sure that they build up an army or an armada to invade. He's the main problem. But on the other side, you've got, oh, actually, it wasn't only the Pope. It was also things like the Northern Earls, the Catholics in the country, the role of the Netherlands, and also Mary Queen of Scots. So when you've got those written down, when you've tackled, yes, I agree with this statement, no, I don't agree with this statement, and then you've got to say, what one do you agree with? Then you've got to come up with, well, which side do I fall on? And it is better to try and pick one side. What some students do, and I don't blame them for doing this, say, well, it's a little bit of both. Okay, they sit on the fence. I don't really know. But it is, and what they say is a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and they try to, oh, I'm not sure which is the right one, what one should I say? Examiners don't really care what you think, to be perfectly honest. What they really want you to be able to do is how well have you argued it, and how well have you put an argument together? How well have you explained it? Have you used a lot of historical information here? And if you can say, right, I think it was Mary Queen of Scots was the main reason, if you're leaning towards that, then say so. And say why you think that was more of a threat, okay? Or if you think it was the Pope, you might argue it was the Pope who was the main problem that actually excommunicated. Because if it wasn't for the fact the Pope excommunicated Elizabeth and encouraged other countries to want to invade, then there would not have been a plot from the Catholics in England to overthrow her. There would not have been this problem with Mary Queen of Scots and other countries wanting to get involved. Or you could say, even if there was that threat from the Pope, if she had treated Elizabeth, the Catholics better in this country, or if she had looked after Mary Queen of Scots and not imprisoned her, or she had even refused her entry into England as a safe haven, she would not have been the focus for people, Catholics, and therefore there would not have been a plot to overthrow her. It is not an easy argument. These questions are not easy. The problem is with this paper, there's two of them you've got to do. Okay, there's two questions. Two questions. I beg your pardon. There's one of these, but you've got a choice of one or the other. So you do the same thing. So you think, oh, which one do I do? Which one do I use? It's entirely up to you, really. So if you have a look at the paper, I'll just quickly show you it, if I can find it. I think it's this one. This is the actual paper here. I've got, so this is how much, so the attitude of the Pope. And this next one was, or you can answer Drake's most significant achievement in the years 1558 to 88 was the raid on Cadiz. How far do you agree? And you look at the singeing of the kings of Spain's beard when he went to Cadiz, he's privateering, and what else he did. So you got to know quite a lot about what Drake got up to. But you do the same thing. How far do you agree with when he went in and destroyed some ships in Cadiz? How much do you think it was to do with his privateering and he's been a pirate, or was there other things involved? So you make sure at the end of these, you go back. Please, you make sure you go back to the question. What do you agree with? What statement do you agree with that statement, or do you not agree with that statement? Okay, I hope you've enjoyed that quick run through on those papers. I'll hopefully see you again soon. If you need any help, any advice on any questions, my email address is brian@myowntutor-crawley, Crawley in Sussex.co.uk. So brian@myowntutor-crawley-crawley.co.uk, and I'll hopefully help you and hear from you. Speak to you soon. Goodbye.